Good evening, everybody. Rambler here. Thought I would speak on my dyslexia and how it affected my life. I think it might help somebody who might be going through something similar. I have one of the very rare dyslexias where I don't see things backwards, but I will say them. So I don't see them as being mixed up or anything like that. But after I read a group of numbers, I will say it backwards. Okay? And the reason why, as far as I know, now I don't know a lot about this situation. I grew up poor. And my mom is a very proud person, so she would ignore something like this. She didn't want to address it. And so she never did. But of course, she only had until I was 10. And then I broke away. I'm sure if, she would have later on. I'm sure she would have. But anyways, so being a kid and being in school where, you have all the pressures and all the popular people are there and the unpopular people, and I was always associated with the unpopular and the undesirable, and the main reason was because I couldn't learn. And believe it or not, my type of dyslexia wouldn't be it wouldn't have been as much of a challenge in today's day, because today's day they use off-white paper. In my day, in the 80s and the 80s and 90s, when I went to school, they used bright white paper, okay? And my type of dyslexia, you may never have even heard of it, but you could look it up, is the white paper sent it to the wrong part of my brain. So I literally would read a word or read a sentence and I couldn't comprehend it. You imagine how frustrating that would be when a young pretty girl is in school and she's a teacher's aide and you're in 3rd grade or 4th grade or 5th grade. I went to school up until I was 10 years old. So, and I went off and on as well, but I never went like a full year. Like I went to junior high. I think junior high was the only time I ever went to a full year, and that was because I was in a boys' home. So, I couldn't learn. It was sending it to the wrong part of my brain, and nobody knew it, and nobody gave it any thought. They just thought that I wasn't trying, and they thought that I was being deliberately rebellious, and I wasn't learning on purpose, and I wasn't giving in any effort. And that was the farthest thing from the truth. I had a bad home life. So I'm at this free school. Don't you think I would reach out and try to do good and try to please these people? Of course I did. I tried with every ounce of my being, and I just couldn't do it. And so by the time I was 10 years old, I knew I wasn't going to get any support from school. That was half the reason why I left home, and I went out on my own and tried to become a young man, which I regret ultimately, because I wish I would have been a child when I was a child. If you read the Bible will tell you, let a kid or a child be, basically let them be a baby when they're a baby, and let them be a kid when they're a kid, and they will be an adult when they're an adult. And what that means is that if you shelter a child, like my mother, for instance, I come from a so-called godly nation, and people don't even know how to raise their children godly. My mother certainly wasn't, because all of these southern people, they would raise their kids, and they still do, sheltered. And they would shelter them their whole life. And so by the time they were 18 years old, they wanted to get out and have fun and go be dangerous and risk their lives, which is exactly what my mother did, unfortunately. She was, I'm talking about a straight A student. She could have went to college. She could have done so much. So anyways, so it affected me in a really bad way at a very young age. And that was half the reason why I left. And so when I left, I just became really street smart, and I learned the streets like the back of my hand. And for the next, I was pretty much, I'd go to school every once in a while. My mom never involved the police when I ran away when I was younger. She's not that type of person. My mom doesn't like the cops. Like, my mom hates the cops. Like, seriously. She always has. She taught us to be leery of them my whole life. Okay? It wasn't a fad to her. She was just on the other side of the fence with my father. And so she knew her enemy. And she always taught us to be very leery of those people. Doesn't mean you can't respect them. It just means to be... a healthy fear is a good thing, in other words. I can explain that to you another time. So anyways, by the time I was 12 years old, and I had been on the street and barely going to school and running away, and my mom, coming and getting me for a day, and I'd go back home for a day or 2 days, and I'd leave again for 3 months. It wasn't like I was gone for a day, little 10-year-old, and no, I was gone for 90 days. Okay, and I was comfortable. I didn't need to go home. I was taking care of business. But again, I couldn't read anything. I couldn't spell. I couldn't read. I was illiterate, 100% illiterate. And when I was 12 years old, I went to all the kids around downtown. I started, going to a place called Crosswalks, and you can look that place up. It's in Spokane, Washington. And same thing. I couldn't comprehend. I could do all the math. I could do the other, but I couldn't read. I couldn't comprehend. And that was my dyslexic things. And so basically 3 years go by, and I struggle with being able to read. Okay? I didn't know how to read and write when I was 15 years old. Okay? I'm an American, a white one. And you think I have privilege? Let me tell you something, son. Only rich people and famous people have privilege, and that is not predicated on the color of their skin. Period. It is predicated on their connections, who they are. It's always been that way. There was black slave owners. People don't realize what real reality is. They think that, the white man came from Europe. Wrong. 3 to 4 generations means you are indigenous to the land that you are on. So sorry, white Americans are native to America because we created it. People are so short-minded, like they don't understand. So anyways, I've done a lot of studying since I learned to read, as you can tell, because I'm very knowledgeable. I've studied theology, and I've been to theology college, which is the study of God's Word. Look it up if you don't know. And if you do, awesome. So anyways, I'm 15 years old. I can't read, I can't write, and that's when I met Byron D. Weldon, and he taught me how to be a chameleon. And basically spent the next year and a half-ish under his tutelage. And then he had a lot of issues because his dad's very famous. Look him up. Felix D. Weldon is his father. Tell me in the comments what Felix D. Weldon is famous for. See if you're paying attention, and I'll tell you if you're correct. It's pretty simple. Type in Felix D. Weldon. Anyways, his son has been through a lot, and it had a lot to do with the Russian mafia, which is why I don't appreciate foreigners who come to my country to steal and rape it, and I don't care what color you are. You could be as white as snow. You're the enemy just the same. So anyways, roundabout, I still can't literally read or write, but I'm street smart as they come. I've been on the street my whole life since I was 10 years old, so It's coming around to when I was, I think I was 18 or 17. I might have been 17. And I went to, and this is when I got it fixed. I went to, it's not fixed, but it's when I could manage it. What happened was I went to Job Corps. And during Job Corps, when you first go to Job Corps, you go in with a group. At least you did. This is what they did back then. I don't know what they do now. Okay. But back then, you can, look up the history. It was a great place for me. But it changed my life for the better. 100,000%. I did so much during that time at Job Corps. I learned plumbing. I learned so much. I learned how to read and write, literally. Pretty sure I was 17 years old. So what happened was, how I got it fixed is, we came in a group, and excuse me. We came in the group, and we were sitting in a circle, and we were getting to know each other, okay, with the counselor. And this lady had degrees and blah, blah, blah. She thought she was really smart. And thought she was really educated and better than ever. You could tell. She just thought, but she was nice, but she thought that she was, better than, how those people are. So she's having a conversation, and she goes, let's go around the room and tell us something that most people don't know, some knowledge that you may have. So we went around the room, and I don't remember what anybody said, okay? I only remember what I said. And what I said is what I'll say to this day, because I was educated in history about certain things. And one of those things is the term Indian giver. And the term Indian giver literally came from white people buying land from Indians. And as soon as the person would build a house and a fence around it, the Indians would literally come and raid and kill everybody and take it all back and burn everything down. For what reason they did that? As soon as it was basically whenever they built a fence around, and then they were like, for some reason, I don't understand why, but I know that's where the term comes from, okay? And this lady literally tried to tell me I was wrong in front of everybody, tried to belittle me and tell me that I was incorrect, and then she proceeded to say the same thing I said with different words, and I called her on it. And I'm a 17-year-old kid who's illiterate, and I just called her out on her bullshit. And she was astounded. She was impressed. She was like, oh, okay. And she shut up. She didn't disagree with me anymore. She didn't tell me that I was wrong for calling her out. She just said, okay, you got me there. And she moved on. And she was very nice about it. Well, I don't know however long later, they were doing a placement test. And when I did the placement test, she was supervising it. And basically, it's a test that you take to see where you register on their list as far as 8th grade through 12th grade, okay? So I scored a literal 8th grade comprehension level. And she got mad. She actually got mad. And God used her arrogance, because she was like, there's no way a person with an 8th grade comprehension level just outwitted me. It can't be true. So she was like, there's got to be something wrong. You must have dyslexia, she told me. And I said, well, I have not been able to learn my whole life, and I'm illiterate, and I can't read and write. So yeah, I would agree that there's something wrong with me, and nobody's told me what it is. So she paced back and forth for like probably 15 minutes, a good 15 minutes. And she goes, the only one thing I can think of that we can try right now is I'm going to put a different piece of colored piece of paper, which was purple, over your work, and will you retake the test, the same exact test, but I'm going to do it with a purple piece of paper over it, and do the test that way. When she did that, it literally went from 8th grade to 11th grade second semester. Not exaggerating. You can look it up in Job Corps. And so that's what God used her arrogance, in my opinion. Of course, this is my opinion. But somebody used her. In my opinion, it was God that used her to help me. And finally, when I was 17 years old, I could read for the first time in my life. And I cried like a baby. I cried, and I sunk my heart into reading and learning grammar and just oh my gosh, everything I would see I would read. I would literally would drive the country, driving around and reading signs. I literally taught myself how to read and write reading signs. I'm not exaggerating. And the internet later on. So that's my story of being dyslexic in America. Even though I'm white, doesn't mean that I had any privilege. Quite the opposite, actually. Quite the opposite. My mother was on welfare. I was a fatherless child. And when I was 10 years old, I got away from it. And I was illiterate till I was 17. But I could do other things. I could work. I could, sell substances. I could protect myself. I wasn't scared to walk around or talk to anybody. I was confident. So I had a lot going for me, except for I was illiterate. And a lot of people, especially in the South, especially back in the 1800s, they died illiterate. They were all illiterate, but you didn't want to mess with them, and they could survive. They could fish, they could hunt, they could farm, they could do it all. They couldn't do no reading and writing, like the majority of the country, believe it or not. You can do your own research. Anyways, God bless, thank you, and like and subscribe for more content. Bye-bye.